Welcome to the latest video, and in this video short, well, what we're excited to announce is the publication of the Six Sigma Black Belt Handbook. 400 pages of golden advice on how to become a world-class black belt and earn double your normal engineer salary, because that's what being a world-class problem solver is all about. This is a how-to book. It's not a statistics book. So you are going to become a brilliant engineer. If you buy this book, you are going to become a brilliant black belt. Go to lulu.com and look for the Six Sigma Black Belt Handbook by Paul Allen right now. Welcome to the latest video, and in this lean lesson what we're going to talk about is the lean lesson of the shadow board. So of course shadow boards are often part of your 5S routines, your visual management routines, sometimes part of your TPM, sometimes part of your setup reduction work. So shadow boards can be used kind of everywhere. And to be honest, again, we've already said this, these lean lessons, these elements of standard work, they all fit together. And if you don't do one of them, typically you don't do any of them. And if you don't do standard work, you are simply not a lean organization. Don't think that you are just because you've reduced a bit of stock. That isn't lean. Lean is about standard work. That's its centerpiece. So let's talk about the shadow board. Now, of course, standard work. What is the shadow board? You've got standard work. And of course, where standard work would have come from is you have a fixed demand pattern. Your fixed demand pattern is driving fixed production numbers. And therefore what you have is fixed production cells delivering standard work at the speed that the customer wants it. So the shadow board supports all that standard work. So we have to, as I've just said, we have to do all of these elements, and they all have to dovetail together. So the way your shadow board gets constructed is out of the previous standard work. So what are we going to do? The shadow board supports standard work. So we're going to decide on runner tools, stranger tools. We are going to put the runner tools on a shadow board at the point of activity. At the point of activity, right where the job is done, as close as we can make it. In other words, the task becomes as fast and as easy as it can be. Think of your tea, coffee and sugar and your teaspoons and your kettle. It's a runner process in your house. Where is it all organized? They're all probably within arm's reach, and that's really important. At the point of activity, arm's reach. What's the classic thing with the shadow board? It becomes a tidying up exercise. And we take a box of tools which are at the point of activity and we put them over there on a wall. That is stupid, and you're getting in the way of making money. That is why your technical staff get angry when you try to use shadow boards and take the toolboxes off them. What they want the tools at the point of activity. Of course they do. Makes common sense. put the shadow board at the point of activity and make sure arm's reach. In other words, it becomes an easier task, so they can always find the tool every day easily. Now then, because this contains standard tools that support standard work, every day, probably at a startup, you do an audit. So the operator should go, are all my tools present? They do an audit. Now that's standard work as well. So the morning audit, standard work. But it only works if you visualized your rules through the shadow board. So we're going to do an audit. But here's the most important thing about shadow boards and standard work. Senior management should never walk past a shadow board with tools missing. Remember what you did. Everything flows from the demand of the customer. Standard demand from the customer. Every system you have is set up to please the customer, including this one. If this is wrong, what are you obviously doing? You're letting the customer down. This is the road to visual management. So what the shadow board is doing, of course, is it visualizes the rule. So the rule is these 10 tools right here support standard work. If they're not there, you've got a problem. So it's visual management. It's easy to audit. Senior management should never walk past it because it's money. You're wasting money and upsetting customers if shadow boards are not right. But that's only true if you did the shadow board correctly. Runner tools at the point of activity with it in arm's reach, based on standard work coming from the planning department. Everything is aligned based on standard work. And by the way, just a point from me about how to do shadow boards. I would always label the board. So what is it? Tool for the CNC 501 machine or whatever it is. I'd label the board. I'd always put the company logo in the top corner. That tells you it's an official tool set. It was put there by the company. The company's logo is in the top left-hand corner. And please, always label the tools. I know the technician says, I know what the 10mm spanner looks like. But if you come to a shadow board with no tools, with no labels on it, here it is. Everything got pinched last night. So we got all these empty hooks on the shadow board. Tell me what's missing. You don't know what tools are missing. You don't know what the standard is. The labels are not to tell you what it is. It's to tell you what's missing so you can replace it. And of course, you can audit it. That's what it's for. It's visual rules. Please do your shadow boards correctly. Follow a brilliant standard. Please drive your shadow boards at the point of activity within arm's length based on the standard work that services the customer. And if you start to put all these chain links of standard work in place, your workplace will get easier, you'll make products faster, but the point is your customers will be serviced easier because everything is flowing from the customer demand. Standard work flows from customer demand. Get your shadow boards to support.